Dear friends, Maths Aspirants is a community of math students and lovers initiated by myself in 2017. As all of you know, we are arranging online problem solving sessions and online test series for helping the students, and also we are providing discussion platform in WhatsApp for sharing the doubts of students with their seniors as well as young faculties and all that. And all of you know there are many important exams like TAFR Graduate School 2022, CSAR NET JRF, and JAM exam. All are going to happen in the coming months. So we are arranging problem solving sessions on important areas of these exams. And as a part of that sessions, today we have Mr. Harinarayanan ji, who is a PhD student at ISER Tirupati, Andhra Pradesh, is with us. Hari done his BSc from Government Victoria College, Palakkad, Kerala, and MSc from Cochin University of Science and Technology, Kerala. He qualified UGC JRF and now a PhD student at ISER Tirupati. So I express my sincere thanks and gratitude to Hari for being with us. And I hope that today's evening will be a very nice opportunity for the students. I welcome all of you to this event. And
okay, thanks for the thanks for giving me a chance to give a lecture. It's not a lecture, it's going to be more like a discussion on this. So I'll be mostly discussing on, I'll be starting my discussion with Riemann integration. And yeah, I'll be following mostly from Bartil and Sherbert. And starting today, I'm not sure if we'll be doing much of that. So we'll start with what it is actually, why does it make sense? What is Riemann integration? What is integration? And why did this idea come from? Where did this idea come from? And all those things. And we won't be going much into history because, yeah, that's too much to talk. And so, yeah, that's it. And please make sure to interact. As Sir have already pointed out, this is going to be an interactive session. So I'll be, if I'm saying something and you think that I may have made a mistake, please let me know. I may make mistakes, of course. And if you think there is a better way to explain things, still do let me know that too. Let others, let everyone get the fruits of what we know. Essentially, that's what we are doing for, right? Okay, so we'll start. So I'll be turning off my video for now, so that's integration. Of course, I'm not gonna talk much about this great man Riemann and all. He's okay. So he's a great guy. He's one of the famous mathematicians who passed away before 40s, and still have given a lot to mathematics and other sciences. So yeah, one of the reasons that Fields medals will be given to people only less than 40, you see. There are enough people who were less than 40 but have given enough contributions, like Ramanujan, Galois, Riemann, everyone. Okay, let's just continue. So integration. So integration, we may all think that or know that it's some way to, in very basic sense, it's some way to calculate area of some objects or area of things. So to not area, so volume, area, or anything like that. So for now, we'll think of that as area. So it's to find area of things. I'm talking very vaguely, but I hope you get the point. Is that okay? Do I make sense? You all know that it's for, we use integration usually for finding area of things, right? So Yeah, let's just consider say rectangle. If I have a rectangle, how do I find the area of this rectangle? Let's say this side is a, length a, and this side is length b. So how do I find the area of this? You can unmute and talk.
A into B.
Yeah, right. So we essentially do a times b, a times b. So this is a very nice looking polygon. So it's a very nice thing. So we know that its area can be found in this way, right? And similarly, if we or if we have a, let's say, if we have a parallelogram. Okay, this is a parallelogram. And let's say this side is B and this side is A. Then you can't directly say what it is, but if we know the height of this, then can you say something about the area of this?
BH.
Yeah, it will be B times H. So what did we do? We don't really know the area of parallelogram, but what we did is we cut off this part and fixed it here. Right. So essentially this complements here, and now we got a rectangle whose area we already know, which is A times B. So here it became B times H. Right. So essentially for this we are good. And what about a triangle? If I have a triangle, what do you do? How do you find the area of this triangle? Let's say this side is base and assume that it is H.
Half HB.
Yeah, so we do half of H times B. So what did we do? Again, we cut it off and take this and put it ulta here, but you can't directly do that. So we kind of do some, what's that called? Some kind of mumbo jumbo and actually work this out. So what can you do? You can actually first put this ulta. So this becomes something like this. And this rectangle, we can keep it ulta. So you get something like this. So this may not be a parallelogram, but we don't really mind much, because then we take half of this and take this point, and then we somehow say that if we break out, and we can actually make a rectangle like this by cutting off things and pasting here and here. So essentially you get that the area is half HB. I mean, this is one of the way to do it. Of course, there are multiple ways to do it. Okay. Now, these are like very nice things. We did cutting and pasting and found the area. Right. Now, assume you have a, let's say, weird shape like this, which looks like an amoeba. How would you, I mean, find the area of this guy? I mean, do you have any ideas of how to find the area of this?
Make as much squares in it.
Right. So essentially, one of the ways is take as much squares in it. So for that, let me just try something. Yeah. So now I made the background a square. So you can just count all these squares. Right. That's something like that is what you are saying. Right. So as much squares inside it. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah. So essentially we count all the squares inside this. So we have this square, this square, this square, and all these squares are inside this. So we kind of say that we don't know the whole area, but the area will be less than or greater than whatever area we have from this sum of squares. Right. So essentially what are we doing? We have, we want to find area of some irregular shape or some shape which we don't directly know the area of. So we kind of split it into things or entities which we already know, whose area we already know. That's what we are doing, right? So essentially you take off all these squares and say that, yeah, area of that is essentially almost same as the area of this weird amoeba. And then we are good. We are like, okay, good. I mean, I'll give you some kind of error. So it's okay. But you can see that there is a big difference here. So you have very big difference of area here. Not very big, you have some difference of area. So what do you do to make this difference smaller? I mean, for example, I took this small squares, right? What if I had taken this big squares? Then I would have gotten very big error, right? Big error range. But if I am taking small square, I'll be getting smaller error. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So essentially from this, we kind of get an idea that, I mean, this is exactly what we do in mathematics mostly. So we have something which we don't know. We split it into smaller things or smaller problems that we know. So Halmos is the one who said it, right? If you have a problem which you don't know the solution of, you can find a problem, a simpler problem, which leads to this problem whose solution you can find. So it's essentially the same philosophy. So we do this. We essentially split it into smaller things and find the area. So this is exactly what we are doing in what we call as Riemann integration. Right. So what is Riemann integration? What do we do in Riemann integration? We have some, I mean, I won't be doing all the proofs and all. Do you want me to do the proofs, or should I just give the idea and do the problems, then look into the idea of proof? What do you want to do? I mean, I'm fine with anything.
I think hint for the proofs. is
Okay,
enough,
yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. When I said ideas, I meant kind of things. Okay, yeah, we'll do that. Okay, so we'll start with the idea of this so-called Riemann integration. So people do it in multiple ways. So one is like taking partitions or taking upper sum and lower sum. So both make sense, but it's easier to see it from upper sum and lower sum. So let's do that. I mean, Patil does in a different way, but it doesn't matter. So assume you have a function. So you have a, okay. This is my graph. I'm in plane and I have a function, right? And I have this A and I have this B. And we essentially want to find the area under the graph and in between the graph and the x-axis. This area is what we want to find, right? So essentially, as the same thing that we did earlier, we want to split it into things that areas that we know of. Earlier in the amoeba, we were trying to put squares inside it, right? So similarly, here also we will try to put things inside the area. So what do? We can do this. So we take points here, some number of points, and then we try to make rectangles. Okay, by the way, if the class seems to be too slow, you can tell me so that I can speed it up. It's fine, any speed is fine. Okay, so if you if it's like it's too basic, then you can let me know and we'll increase the pace. I'm pretty sure that till here it's fine for everyone, right? Yeah, okay, so if it's slow, please let me know. And if it's fast, still you let me know. Okay. So this is, these are some square rectangles which are under the area, and we can find the area of these rectangles. Like, how do you find the area of this rectangle? You have, consider these points as, let's say, A1, A2, and A3. So what is this distance? This distance is A1 minus A. And what is this distance? This height. This height is something like, if I consider this point as let's say small m1, then this height will be small m1, right? The small m1 will be small m1. And what is this m1? m1 is actually a point which is image of some point here. So this happened to be A1 itself, so we are good. So it is like f of function value
F of A1.
Yeah, good. F of A1. And what about here? So here we again have a point and call this point as this length as M2. So what is this M2? It's actually a point on the graph. So you can kind of find a point in between A1 and A2 such that you have M2 as the value, right? So call this point as, let's say, R2. Here R1 is A1. You call this point R2. So what is the area of this rectangle then? You have, hello?
A2 minus A1 will be empty.
Yeah, A2 minus A1 times M2. And as I know M2 is f of R2, then I'll say it is A2 minus A1 times f of R2. Right. Similarly, I can do the same game for all of this partition. So in this particular case, you have this point happen to be M3, which happen to be image of A2 itself. So what will happen? F of A2 times this area is f of A2 times A3 minus A2. And this area is going to be, here this became f of A3, M3, which is f of A3. So f of A3 times B minus A3. Right. So we can kind of say that area under the graph is greater than, I know that there is a bit space above here, above here, above here, above here. So I know that area is greater than this sum f of R1 times A1 minus A plus f of R2 times A2 minus A1 plus f of R3 times A3 minus A2 plus f of R4 times A4, which is, we are taking it as B minus A3. Right, that's exactly the area of these four rectangles. Right, this much is fine. So then again, we only took 3 in between points, so we kind of get only 3 things. So if we are going on taking multiple points, it's hard to write. So we just use our sigma notation. So summation over, let's say, j runs from 1 to, in this case, 4, f of rj times a j plus 1 minus aj. No, aj minus 1. And you call a as a0, a equal to a0, b equal to a4. And this works, right? So I know that area is bigger than this summation. Right? So we kind of got something which is bigger than the area. Now, in the same logic, if we continue to apply the same logic, we can actually find something which is bigger than the area, right? So I have a and b here. And we have the function values. And let's say 3 points again. And we have the function values in these points. Now you consider a rectangle, a big rectangle, which entirely contains this area. So this rectangle fully contains our needed area, right? Similarly, you do the same for every other part. So, yeah. Consider rectangles which fully contain our area. Now, again, we have the points A1, A2, A3, and this is A4, and this is A0. Of course, we play the same game. Now, area, needed area, is bounded above, because whatever rectangles we are taking are already containing the area contained, right? So, know that area is bounded above by this, whatever we are going to get. So what is the area of, what is the area of this? So we consider the point here and see what point it is here. So call it capital R1, and then this will be f of capital R1. And here you call this as capital R2. So this is f of capital R2. And here capital R3, f of capital R3. And this is f of capital R4. Right. So now we know the height and width. So we just find the area. It is just f of R1 times A1 minus A0 plus f of R2 times A2 minus A1 f of R3 times A3 minus A2 f of R4 times A4 minus A3. Right. So now this is okay, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. By the way, let me ask this beforehand. Have all of you seen this particular part as in Riemann integration, or is there someone who haven't seen this yet or haven't understood this yet? It's okay to say it out, you know. I mean, in case everyone knows about these things, I can move a bit faster. Or if there are people who doesn't know, I can move to more details if it's hard to follow.
Sir, it's understood.
Okay, it's understood, but is this the first time you're seeing it, or have you already seen this?
So we have seen this somewhat, not completely, but somewhat.
Okay.
Sir, I have a doubt in Riemann integration, but
Okay,
all. What is the difference between Darboux sum and Riemann sum?
Okay. So essentially, we are diverting a bit, but technically speaking, what we are doing now is kind of Darboux, and Riemann is using some internal points, right? I mean, in the end, both comes out to be the same. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so Darboux integration is what essentially what we are doing here, as in taking upper sum and lower sum. And Riemann integration is where you actually take a point in between randomly and consider the partition. But in case of nice functions, the class of functions happen to be the same, and the numerical value you get happens to be the same. So we don't differentiate.
Okay.
Okay. So how about others? Is it like, should I pace it up or something?
Hari, majority
Yeah.
of them already studied because in 5th semester degree, majority of the students having that topic in their syllabus, I think.
Okay. So essentially, I can move a bit faster. I mean, these things they would have already seen, and it's like nothing high-fi. Okay. Good.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Good. Okay. So now we have the concepts. Assume that we have the concepts of these things. So upper sum, lower sum. Okay. Have you seen it like this, or have you seen it as a partition?
Upper sum, lower sum. Yes.
Okay. So you have seen it as upper sum and lower sum. Okay. Have anyone seen it as partition and
Yes,
partition,
sir.
tagged partition? Okay. So have you seen it as upper sum and lower sum too, and seen that this kind of comes out to be the same?
Not in this name,
Okay.
but
Okay, fine. Then let's just start with upper sum and lower sum. So upper sum is essentially whatever we did. Yeah.
Like tagged partition sum is specifically for the Riemann sum, right? I mean, Riemann did this tagged partition, right?
Yeah, you can say that.
Yeah, because like what I studied is like in Riemann sum, Riemann actually calculated the value of the integral, but in the Darboux only proved that this is integrable. I mean the Darboux proved that RPF minus LPF is less than epsilon. It just says that this map is integrable, but Riemann actually find the value also, I guess. If I'm not wrong.
You see, isn't it easier for Darboux to find the integral because you actually have the values and you can say that you can sandwich some value in between, right? Yeah. So yeah, I am not sure if what you said is entirely correct, but yeah, I think what you meant is he used more like a Cauchy criteria.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. I mean, definition-wise, true, because you are essentially saying that it is integrable if the difference becomes smaller and smaller.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, you are right. You are right. Okay, so let's come back to this. So we have upper sum and lower sum. So upper sum is essentially when we consider the maximas. So we assume the maximas are attained at capital MIs and say that the area is bounded above by summation over f of capital Mi and delta xi. And lower sum is where you consider the minimas, call them small mi's, and say that capital area is bounded below by of small mi's, delta xi's. This is what we do in upper sum and lower sum, right? And then again, for tagged partition, what do we want? First, we want a partition P, actually tagged partition P dot. So tagged partition for people who don't know what a tagged partition is, it's this. So essentially, you have the interval AB. You consider points in between, just like previously we put dots. We consider points. So and call them, let's say, A naught equal to A naught, comma, which is strictly less than A1, less than A2, up to less than AN, which is equal to B. And we say that this is a partition. It's a partition because I can divide the whole interval into n parts, which doesn't overlap each other. When I say overlap, it doesn't have a proper interval in between. I can have points, but not whole intervals in between. Okay, and we say tag. We say tag because for a particular interval, I just take a point in that interval as something called tag. So as a representative, let's say, and call them, let's say, Ri or something, or Ti. In this case, we call Ti. So this is what a tagged partition is. So you have AIs, and for each AI, comma AI plus 1, we have Ti. So this set, for each interval, you have a point, and Ti is an element from AI plus 1, closed interval. Okay. So this is tag partition, and once we have the tag partition, we kind of say that Riemann sum is essentially this summation f of Ti times delta xi again. Or instead of AI, you take xi, then you have this. So once you see the definition of both of them, a lot of things can be seen directly. I mean, how can you compare both of them? Is it okay? I mean, can you see that both of them kind of represent the same thing? Yeah, okay.
Yes, sir.
I sorry, I didn't say everything. So we say that a function is integrable or Riemann integrable. In first case, if I have a partition such that upper sum, we call it upper sum of, and lower sum of f. So if this difference can be made as small as I want. So When I say as small as I want, I take a small epsilon, whatever epsilon I choose, I can find a partition. That's that. Okay, with respect to the partition. So with respect to that partition, I should be able to make the error in between the partition as small as I want. If I can do that, I call it Riemann integrable in terms of upper sum and lower sum. In terms of Riemann integration, in terms of this partition part, we say that if there exists a real number, there exists L in R such that I can do this. Again, I can find a partition LP. Okay, partition RP. Let's call this sum as RP with respect to the partition RPF minus L to be bounded. Then I can say that it is Riemann integrable. This is what someone was just asking, right? For saying something is Riemann integrable, we kind of want the value, but for saying something which is integrable in Darboux sense, you don't need a particular value. Is this what you were trying to ask? I don't remember who asked it. Is this the hello? Who is the one who asked about the difference between not the difference, said that it needs a value and this is Cauchy kind of thing?
Yes.
Okay, Shubham. So is this what you meant?
Yeah. Is that like Riemann specifically found that real number, which is the integral of that map under the domain, but like Darboux, not exactly, but approximately did in the Cauchy sense. That is,
Okay.
Darboux just give a criteria that when we call that f is integrable. But
Yeah. Okay.
yes.
Okay. So what you are trying to say is that for Riemann integration, for if you are going by Riemann's so-called Riemann definition, then you need a limit to say that it is Riemann integrable. But in Darboux case, we don't need that. We can just adjust with the upper sum and lower sum, right? Okay. Okay. Good. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Good. Now we are gonna my question again. Can you somehow say that these things look same, or do they give you same things? Do they give the same number? If it is integrable, you call that wherever this limits to be integral, right? And in this case, L itself is integral, and in this case, whatever it limits to, that is integral. These things I hope you already know. So why do you think Riemann integral should be same as so-called Darboux type of integral? Do you think that they should be same in the first case?
I think both must be same. I mean, both will give the same value as the integral, but I don't see an immediate proof now. I mean, I have to think.
Okay. Someone else? Does anyone else? I mean, can anyone give an idea about? I mean, at least one way should be enough. I mean, at least one way. If some should be almost similar as other than. I mean, when do we say two numbers are equal? What's the easiest way to say A equal to B? Or let's say capital A subset of capital B, or capital A equal to capital B as sets. One of the ways
A is a subset of B and B is a subset of A.
Yeah, exactly. So A is a subset of B and B is a subset of A. It works the same way here also, right? So I can just consider A is less than or equal to B and B less than A. If I prove both of this, it means this is done, right? So this is how you usually see that some two things are equal. One of the way, of course. Otherwise, you can go by definition and get to this. But, okay. So now, can someone give any idea? So Shubham said that it looks same, but can't give anything concrete directly. which happens. Intuition is there, but you can't explain why. So does anyone have any idea like why should some, at least can you compare which one should be bigger than what? What should be bigger than what? Or which should be?
Yeah, the only idea I am thinking is if we can compare the Riemann sum and Darboux sum, then we can prove.
Yeah. So one thing is, oh, you see, if you look at the picture itself, you can kind of get some idea. It's we are not directly doing this. Okay, this is not the only way. That's why I said I was kind of misleading you. Sorry, but anyway, assume you have this function again, and you have the points, and assume you have, let's say, 2 partition points only. Okay, and what are the upper sum is this. Lower sum is this, using this ones. And for Riemann integration, let's just take random points in between, let's say these points. And say the points are these are for Riemann integration. And then for tag the partition. Right. So these are the tags. T1, T2, T3. Right. Can you somehow see that if you just look at one of the rectangles, the upper sum, I mean the upper rectangle ka area, and is obviously greater than lower rectangle ka area, right? But then again, the partition ka area somehow comes in between that. Can you see that?
Yes, yes.
Right. So when we say that upper sum will be, what is the idea of saying upper sum minus lower sum can be made as small as possible? Kind of says, gives us the idea that upper sum kind of becomes equal to lower sum, right? When you are making partition small enough, we are saying upper sum is almost equal to lower sum. But you can see that whatever we do, this Riemann integration ka value is in between upper sum and lower sum. Right. I mean, is that okay for everyone? I mean, does it make sense?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So this kind of say that in case upper sum is equal to lower sum, then whatever value is given by that equal numbers should be same as the value that we got by doing the tagged partition. Right? I mean, it's kind of sandwiching. We are sandwiching two things. That's how we are finding the integral. We are sandwiching upper sum and lower sum. And actually the whatever we are getting using the tagged partition comes in between them. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So Shubham understood.
So it's like the Riemann sum is more finer than the Darboux sum, right?
What do you mean finer?
Finer means like.
And there is nothing called Darboux sum in the first place.
Okay. I mean, like for finding a area for some weird shape, the previous idea is make as small as squares and count. So if your square is small enough, then we can approximate the area. I mean, if your square is smaller, then the area is, and then the approximation is much better. Am I right?
Yeah, you mean we can control the error using smaller and smaller what's it called, rectangular square. Right.
So
yeah, that's
like,
true.
Like in the Darboux sum, we are using some rectangle areas, but in Riemann sum we again split this area into two parts. This one area using the tagged partitions. So the what I mean finer means we are we are partitioning the interval more I mean shorter than in the Darboux sum. Like in the Darboux sum we take this A, B, C, D, the bigger ones, but in the Riemann sum we have a tagged partition in between AB also, that is T1.
I think you are kind of misunderstanding something. So you see, okay, I don't know. Maybe I'm misunderstanding what you are saying. Are you saying that this tag again gives one more partition?
I'm thinking in this.
No, that's not true. That's not true. Okay. Okay. You see, what is happening is this. In upper sum, what did we do in upper sum? If this point gives you the maximum and call it capital M1, then the area of that bigger rectangle is what? F of capital M1 times x1 minus x0. Right. And smaller area will be what? F of small m1 x1 minus x0. But in tagged partition, for the interval x0 x1, for corresponding to x0 comma x1, I have a tag corresponding to this. I have
T1.
a tag, let's say T1. Right, and T1 sits inside this. So what I'm trying to say is f of m1 is maximum possible value in interval x1 x0, and f of small m1 is the minimum possible value in interval x1 x0. So whatever T1 is, I know that f of T1 actually lies in between, okay, sorry, other way, in between f of capital M1 and f of small m1. Is this okay?
Yes, yes.
Now we are not splitting it into finer partition as you were thinking. We are not considering these two things.
T1. We are varying this T1 on the interval x0 to x1, right?
Yeah, exactly. So essentially it's the same interval. It's just that the rectangle is a bit smaller than the biggest rectangle, but bigger than smallest rectangle. That's what I was trying to say when I said you sandwich in between. This is the sandwiching, which is exactly what you can see here. Small capital M, small m, and this is Ti, f of Ti. Okay, is this, yeah, yes.
Sir, is Riemann sum find accurate area of the area under the curve? Because I asked this question because the tag point are arbitrary, so the Riemann sum is Riemann sum find the accurate area.
Okay, so here is the thing. So Riemann sum is whatever we are getting as summation f of Ti times xi minus xi plus 1. No, xi plus 1 minus xi. Right. So this summation given a partition P dot, this is what a Riemann sum is. Right. So for each partition P dot, we can actually find Riemann sum, and we represent it as some R of what P dot comma F. Right. This is how you represent it. So this sum, this particular sum, obviously depend on P dot also.
Yes, sir.
So Riemann sum depends on P dot, but what is the limit? Limit is this particular number, the existence of number that we are asking for. So in the definition of Riemann integrability, we are saying that there exists L in R, such that given any epsilon positive, I mean, given any error, I mean, in physics labs and all, you will be saying, yeah, you are only allowed this much error. Usually they say 20% error and all. So if I give you an error, your whatever value, you have to give me a partition. there exists a partition, and the partition have all the conditions such that norm of the partition should be less than delta and all. For now, I assume you know this, so I'm not explaining more about it. Such that in the end, if the partition norm is less than delta, and there exists a delta, and hence all the partitions less than norm delta, which have this condition, which satisfies this condition, right? The Riemann sum given by those partitions will be very close to this number, this L limit. Is that okay? I mean, this is what Riemann integrability is, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, Riemann sum, of course, may not be giving the accurate value of the integral, but this L will give you the accurate value of integral. Is that okay? I mean, there's a difference, right? Riemann sum and the limit, which is Riemann integral.
Yes, sir.
So Riemann sum is a very good approximation for the integral, which is Riemann limit. I mean, that integral is, this L is what we represent by writing this a to b f dx. I mean, this notation is just a replacement for this L. Right, so it's a number. We represent this L as this. Is that okay? So, is there any other doubts? I mean, is your doubt cleared?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, let me tell this again. So, Riemann sum may not be equal to the actual integral, but there are times where it can be equal to. Okay, for example, the simplest function, you consider a constant function. Here the Riemann sum will always be equal to whatever partition you take. The Riemann sum will always be equal to the integral, because you always get rectangles. You don't have to approximate it up and down. You're always getting rectangles or things like that. So in these trivial cases, the sums comes out to be the same, but that's not always the case.
Okay, sir.
Okay, good. So any other questions in okay, maybe this is a good way to do. Instead of, okay, should I be taking the class, or you guys can ask all the doubts you have in Riemann integration, and I'll tell you what.
Sir, if possible, make some numerical, sir, on Riemann integration.
Okay, so okay, fine. So fine. So let me ask you a question, which you can either say it is Riemann integration, or you can say it is integration and summation. So let's just consider this. Find the area of integral from 0 to 1 x square dx. I mean, of course, you know that it's x cubed by 3 and all. Or let's start with x first. X dx. I mean, how do you usually do it? You know, integral of x is x square by 2. X square by 2 from 0 to 1, which is 1 by 2. Right? This is how you do it, but can you do it using Riemann integral? How would you do it using Riemann integral? Okay, well, of course, you can either do it yourself and tell me the idea, or you can just start with giving ideas and we can do it together, whichever you want to do.
Split into intervals.
Okay, what intervals? What is your choice of partition? When you say split into interval, you are essentially asking me to divide the interval.
4 regular partition.
Okay, regular partition. Regular partition, you essentially mean that all the interval, sub-interval lengths should be same, right? That's what.
Yes, sir.
So essentially you divide 0, 1 into regular partitions. How many parts are you dividing it into? 4, 5, 6, 10, 20, 100, 1000.
N parts.
Okay, n parts. Nice. So you are dividing it to n parts. So of course, the length should be 1 minus 0 by n, which is 1 by n. So what will be the partition points? We have 0 less than
1 by n.
2 by n less than 3 by n, blah, 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 to n by n, which happens to be 1. So this gives you that you have n partition. Good. Now what? So you got the partition, you know the function. Now what will you do?
Now we will find upper sum and lower sum.
Right, you can find upper sum and lower sum. So what will be the upper sum? Upper sum. Okay, call this partition P. Upper sum of P x function is x. What is this? Okay, so for that, question comes up, right? Which points will the maximas be attained? Which points will the minimas be attained?
Sir, it is a strictly increasing function. X is x being a strictly increasing function. Then
Yeah.
the right hand point is the of the interval is the maximum point.
Right, good. So essentially, you are saying that as it is a monotone function, monotonically increasing function, so this is observation. F of x equals x is monotone increasing, implies maxima, capital Mi of, let's say, xi plus 1 is equal to just xi plus 1 and small mi of this small mi. Xi comma x plus 1 equal to small x. Right. Now we are almost done with the thing. So what is upper sum? Upper sum p comma x equal to summation okay, when we are doing problems, almost, I mean, unless it's there is a an idea jump or something like that, I am not planning to write it unless some of you will dictate. Okay. Or you should at least give an idea. What's the definition of upper sum?
Summation 1 by
Summation?
xi plus 1
Summation xi plus 1
upon n.
upon n. So this is essentially xi plus 1 is the function value and upon n becomes delta x. Right?
Yes.
Right. And what is lower sum? L P x equal to
xi upon n.
xi upon n.
Summation xi upon n.
Yeah, right. Summation xi upon n. Now, what are we doing? Okay, can you see that you are actually trying to say that LUP, L and U difference will be small enough, right? Is that what you are trying to say?
Yes.
So, okay, now we are gonna do U minus L, which is summation xi plus 1 by n minus summation xi by n. Which is what? This is a telescopic, right? It's a telescopic. Is that okay? I mean, you know what telescopic sum is. So in the end, you get it as what? One, all that will remain is 1. So 1 by n minus 0 by n, which is equal to 1 by n. So you are essentially saying that the difference is 1 by n, right? And this 1 by n, as n increases, whatever epsilon we are choosing, epsilon being a positive number, I can always find a natural number less than natural number says that 1 by n is less than epsilon, and hence
By Archimedean
you are
property.
kind of done. Yeah, exactly, by Archimedean property. It's a very nice property. So by Archimedean property, you can say that there exists, given any, or you can, instead of using Archimedean property, you can say that 1 by n being a sequence converging to 0. You can always say, can say that there exists, given any epsilon positive, there exists n such that 1 by n bounded by epsilon. Hence you are done, right? Okay, but this is not what we wanted to do, right? I mean, yeah, you can say that x is integrable from this, but what is the value of integral? I mean, I want you to get me a number L, which is actually limit of this, or you give me something which gets sandwiched by this.
So our guess is half, so we can verify. I mean,
I mean, it's not a bad idea. I mean, you know how to integrate, so it works out, but if not, you see, you are forgetting something. Although you wrote it in a very nice way, summation xi by n, you wrote it as what? Summation xi by n, right? So you could have just written it out properly, right? What is it? Summation xi. What is xi? Xi is essentially k by n. So it is actually summation I by n. So
So sum of n natural numbers.
exactly. So that's what we are gonna do. So essentially, this is what it is, right? Xi by n is I by n because it is xi. Now this is essentially equal to summation I by n square. 1 by n square is common, so I can take 1 by n square times summation I, and just as who told that sum of natural numbers?
Amrita.
Yeah, Amrita. So just like Amrita pointed out, I know how to do this, right? Do it from 1 to n. You get it as 1 by n square times n into n plus 1 by 2. Now, what is this? You cancel it out. You have n plus 1 by n times 2, which is essentially what? 1 plus 1 by n times 2. And as n increases, 1 by n goes to 0. Hence, I can kind of say that the limit is 1 by 2. Oh, okay, by 2. 1 by 2. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
yes.
Okay. So here we are using the, here we are not integrating it directly, but we are using something that we already know. So similarly, now that you have done it for x, f of x equal to x, can you do it for f of x equal to x square? You consider the same integral, find 0 to 1 x square dx. Or let's start with something easier. Do you want to do x cube or x square? Okay, let's start x square. So what's the issue?
So we can use the summation of squares of natural numbers.
Yeah, exactly. So we can just use the summation of squares of natural numbers. Again, so do you want to dictate it or?
Limited means to infinity.
Yeah, so limit No. Don't use limit just now. I mean, now. First, you have to go through the
Summation I equal to 1 to n.
summation I equals 1 to n.
I square, that is I square by n.
I square by n.
N
You see, the
square.
partition points are I by n's. So you want I by n whole square by n.
N.
Right. So this is essentially equal to summation I square by n cube, which is same as 1 by n cube times summation I square. And what is summation I square?
N into
N into
n plus 1 into 2n plus 1
n plus 1 into 2n
By
plus
6.
1
by 6.
by 6. Okay. So now, of course, we cancel out things. N goes here. So in the end, what do we get? N plus 1 by n. No, 1 plus 1 by n times 2 plus 1 by n by 6. Now you can talk about limit. Now the limit n tends to infinity. This whatever function will give you 1 into 2 by 6, which is 1 by 3. Right?
Yes, sir.
You see, so this gives you two things. I mean, as you asked me for problems, this gives you two things. One, you can find the integral of x square, or in case you are getting a problem like this, 1 plus 1 square plus 2 square plus 3 square plus blah 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 n square by n square, limit n tends to infinity. So you can either go through the definition of summation of squares, or you can, sorry, here n cube, or you can kind of figure out that this is actually integral from 0 to 1 x square. Right. So this is two-way process. You can go there or here. Is that fine? Same for the previous one. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Of course. Now let's think about okay, maybe we should make it a bit more interesting. Not interesting. These were like easy, right? Summation of ni and all you can get easily. So let's ask another question. Ask. Okay, okay. So you heard this question.
Yes.
Okay, so how do you do this?
So summation 1 by n plus k.
Okay, so you are saying it is summation 1 by n plus k, right? So how do you do this summation 1 by n plus k? Do you have a formula for this?
So first of all, divide by n.
Okay, so divide what by n? What do you want to divide by n?
First we common 1 by n.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, that's what you meant by divide by n, right? So essentially, I want to write 1 by n plus k as 1 by n into, I mean, I'm taking n common from the denominator. So you are getting 1 plus k by n.
K by n.
Right. So this summation, I am writing it as summation 1 by n times 1 plus k by n. Yeah, now what?
One by n is constant, then we
Take that outside. Okay. So
Yes,
this
yes,
is equal to 1 by n times summation over 1 by 1 plus k by n. Okay.
K equal to 1 to n.
Yeah, sorry, k equals 1 to n. Okay.
And so left hand limit n tends to infinity, that
Yeah, sorry. You need limit n tends to infinity.
So this is equal to integration 0 to 1, 1 upon 1 plus x.
1 upon 1 plus x dx. Right. Now this you can calculate. Do you know how to calculate this?
Log 2.
ln 1 plus
exactly.
x.
Yeah, so it is log of 1 plus x from 0 to 1. So it is, okay. I'll write log, okay. If it is ln, you mean natural log, I'll write it as log. And in case it is base 10, I'll write it as base 10. So when I say write log, I mean log to the base e, just to be clear. So log of 1 plus x from 0 to 1, which is, yeah, we have already tried this log 2. Right. Now, okay, let me give one more. Let's consider this limit 10 tends to infinity 1 by n plus 1. Same thing. Let's consider the same thing. Instead of till n plus m, I'm gonna go till 1 by n plus, no, not n plus, sorry, n plus, let's say, okay, 7n, or let's say 7n by 2. Nice. Okay, 7n by 2 doesn't make sense. Okay, 7n. Now, what will you do?
In this case, we go through the above process. And the limit change 0 to 6.
Right, exactly. So essentially, what are we doing? So we are doing again n times n plus 1 by, I mean, k by n, and the limit goes from the 7n is actually n plus 6.
N plus 6n.
Right. So k will go till 6n. Right. Okay. 1. So you have 6n by n. So in the end, you have the integral from 0 to 6 log of okay, integral from 0 to 6, 1 by 1 plus 6. Right. Which you again get it as log 5, right? Okay, good. Now, essentially, okay, maybe something with products. So how about this? Limit n tends to infinity, n plus 1 times n plus 2, blah, 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 times n plus n power 1 by n.
Let us take I equal to n plus 1 into n plus 2 dot n plus n to the power 1 by n. Then take log. Then
Sorry, what? So what do you want to do?
let us take I equal to n plus 1 into n plus 2 plus into dot n plus n to the power 1 by n.
Okay, you're giving this a name, I. Okay, let's call it IN.
Yes.
Okay.
IN. Then we take log both sides.
Right, good. So you take log of IN, which is
1 by n.
1 by n.
Summation I equal to 1 to n log 1 plus k.
1 plus k.
I think 1 plus k.
n plus
1
k.
plus k. N plus k. Yeah.
Yes, in plus.
Yeah, now.
Take n outside of n plus k.
So take n outside of n plus k.
So log n into log k.
Yeah, so log n into log k. Is this log?
Now log n into log of 1 plus k by n.
So log of n plus k, you will write it as you take n times 1 plus k by n and write as
Yes,
log
sir.
n plus log of 1
1 plus
plus k by n.
k by n.
Okay, so essentially you are writing it into 1 by n times summation log n plus log of 1 plus k by n. Okay, now
Split the sum.
split the sum. So you have 1 by n times summation log n plus 1 by n times summation log 1 plus k by n.
Then when we apply limit, the second part becomes integral 0 to 1 to n, 0 to 1 log of 1 plus x.
Come integral from 0 to 1.
Log of 1 plus x.
Log of 1 plus x. Okay, so what happens here?
This is equal to summation log n upon n.
Yeah, summation log n upon n. So sorry, what?
Log n is a constant, right?
Yeah, log n is a constant.
So take it out
Yes,
and
So n log n.
n log n. So
Ha,
n will
you
cancel
get-
out log n sum.
Okay, so you get log n plus this. But as n tends to infinity, log n is what can you do for, I mean, as n tends to infinity, you know that log n goes to infinity, right?
Then maybe
So
non-subtract.
you use Cauchy first theorem of limit.
Okay, what is first theorem of limit, Cauchy? Okay, what is that?
So you
Can you tell me what it is?
limit n tends to infinity.
Limit n tends to infinity.
U1 plus U2 plus dot 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 UN by n equal to limit n tends to infinity UN.
N tends to infinity.
UN.
Un. You mean average is limit of average is n as the limit. Okay. How are you going to use this here?
I think this is will be infinity.
It's
Sir, first of all, if we 1 upon wait, sir, wait, sir.
sorry, I can't hear you.
So we can change log n into an integral 0 to 1 by x dx.
Log n into
1 by n, sorry. 1 by n.
where? This one.
This one, yes.
Okay, you are changing it into 0 to
No, that's wrong. Sorry.
yeah. You see, you guys are right. I mean, this limit doesn't converge. I mean, I was wait. You did say that it is infinite, but you are not sure. That's why I didn't give the confirmation. Okay. I mean, it's kind of easy to see from just this, right? I can kind of say that you can bound it by, instead of n plus 1, n plus 2, and n plus n, you just substitute it by n itself. What do you get? N power n whole power 1 by n, which is just n. Right? So limit n tends to
Yes, sir.
so you have a, sorry, this. You have a smaller thing which actually bounds it. No, this was a trick question. So when you only do a question, I mean questions coming from one particular part, don't think that that's the only way. Okay, sorry for tricking you guys, but anyway, I mean, you got into these issues because you assume that you are going to get a finite number, and you assume that you will be able to do it with an integral, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we were doing the same pattern. I just did it to break the pattern. Sorry. Okay, so do you want to do more, or do you have some questions? I mean, all the questions that I have are more or less similar to this. You have some function, you find the limit here and there. Nothing that you guys don't know. If you can do this much, then almost all the functions are you guys can do.
Hari, we
Yeah.
will have only around 15 minutes left out.
Okay. Okay.
So if there are some problem, you can do it. That will be better, I think. If possible.
Yeah, I mean, we were doing problems till now, right? So,
Yeah, we can do
Yeah.
one more problem, I think, by that time.
okay. But if someone
Yeah.
have any doubt till now, maybe I'll clear that and then go to problems
Okay,
again.
okay. No problem, no problem.
Okay. So if you guys have any doubt, I mean, of course, I haven't taught much, but in Riemann integration or something similar, or it don't need to be in Riemann integration. In general mathematics, if you have any doubt, you can ask. Okay, someone raised a hand. Shubha. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I have a doubt in uniform continuity. I don't know I should ask or not.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
okay. It's okay. I mean, if there is no doubts in Riemann integration, of course you can ask.
Okay, so like we know if we have a uniform continuous function from x to y, where x is a metric space and same as y. So if f is uniformly continuous, then every Cauchy sequence map to the Cauchy sequence.
Right.
Right. So now I want to assert the converse. Suppose you have a map f from x to y. Suppose you have a continuous map from x to y, which satisfies every Cauchy sequence map to Cauchy sequence. So does f is uniformly continuous? Then for this I got a counter example that in general we can't say that if the function maps Cauchy to Cauchy, then f need not be uniformly continuous map.
Okay, so what's your example?
Example is we can take f r to r, fx equal to x square.
Fx equals x square.
R to r. Now,
Yeah,
now I am thinking that what other hypothesis I should put so that this becomes uniformly continuous. Then first I thought, this is my question. One suggestion I got is assume f is bounded.
Okay, very good suggestion.
Then second suggestion I got is suppose x is totally bounded.
Okay.
So I didn't find any I didn't get any counter example for these two options. So I'm thinking that it may be true, but I don't know the proof also. I mean, how to prove.
Okay,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can give you ideas
Yes,
which
yes.
actually says that what you are thinking is okay. It makes sense.
Mhm.
Okay, what happens if f is bounded? You are actually your image is actually a bounded set. I mean, in this case, I'm talking in complete metric spaces. Okay, not random metrics. I mean, in metric spaces. So, what do you have? Yeah, f is bounded may not be enough actually.
I mean,
F is totally bound. F is okay. So there is an issue there. In case of R, it works because when F is bounded, image space you are getting, you can actually put it inside a compact set. Right. Same thing that same thing is happening in case of your second assumption also. What is happening? X is totally bounded. So what is a in metric space criteria? What is a compact space? A space is compact if it is closed and totally bounded.
no, complete and totally bounded.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, complete and totally bounded. Right. So once you have completeness also, you can get that the image space will be compact. So if you doesn't have completeness, you still have the smallness of this compactness. So why are you getting this particular counter example? Because you have something which cannot be made into a compact set unless you are putting a extra point, right? Infinity.
Yes.
Right. So that's all what you have to remove. So in this case, you are removing that. In both the cases, you are essentially making y into a small set. So although you are saying X is totally bounded and F is bounded, what you are actually doing is you are making Y into small sets, something like compact or less than compact. You can make it into a compact set kind of thing. You get that one. That makes this work. So once you have a continuous function to a compact set and you have a sequence, Cauchy sequence, you have image to be Cauchy.
Continuous function on compact set is always uniformly.
Yeah, exactly.
So ultimately we are making X as a compact set, right?
I mean, yeah, you can say that too. If you are taking X, yeah. In this case, you are actually making X. Second case, you are making X to be compact, but in first case, you are making Y to be compact. You see, Y. Okay, your question was
but compactness for Y need not ensure that F is uniformly continuous. This is my intuition. I'm not asserting any statement.
That's true. I mean, no, I mean, yeah. So, sorry. Can you repeat your claim?
Yeah, like compactness of Y or less than making compact set Y does not ensure that F is uniformly continuous. We can take discrete metric, I guess. I'm not sure. I mean, R with discrete metric.
Yeah. So just Y having compact is not enough. Yeah, just like you said. Yeah, that makes sense.
But the second is looks like very much. I mean, I'm thinking that we can show that, but the point is, if my X is complete, and with this second assumption, it is equivalent to saying that the continuous function on compact set is uniformly continuous.
Right.
But like only assuming X is totally bounded, can we show that? I mean, this is uniformly continuous. That is my doubt.
Okay, so when you are actually doing that from compact to compact continuous is uniformly continuous, what are we doing? Okay, you are essentially making the epsilon balls and taking that finiteness and considering the smallest thing.
Like in a broad sense, can we restrict some hypothesis other than compactness? I mean, can we reduce some hypothesis? Like I'm thinking, is compactness is the at least one that we cannot. I mean, we have to assume compactness in other manner, like X is totally bounded and then take complete. I mean, the essential hypothesis to being a uniform continuity is compactness, or we can do some lesser hypothesis also. That is, I mean, that is my doubt.
So
Actually,
essentially, you are asking is we know that f from A to B is uniformly continuous if A is compact, but can you make the can you somehow make the condition a bit? Can you slack the condition of compactness say, in case of metric spaces?
yes.
So yeah, essentially, what is totally bounded?
Totally bounded is we can fit this X in a epsilon net ball. I mean, okay, for every epsilon.
Yeah, exactly. So are you using anything other than this for doing this, for this quotient, other than having a limit? I mean, you are essentially using the totally boundedness itself, right? You are essentially making an epsilon net in that proof. So,
like if we assume X is a complete metric space, then it is not enough because the same example will work. R to R, Fx equal to X square. But R is not totally bounded. Am I audible? Hello.
sorry.
So like X, assuming X is a complete metric space.
Yeah. Sorry, my bad. Yeah, this is not enough because you can consider 1 by X, right?
Yes.
So totally boundedness. Yeah, in case you have Y to be bounded or what's that called? Compact, then this being totally bounded may work. Because what's the issue happening? The issue is that even then, even that is not enough. I mean, if you have also frequently oscillating function, it is continuous, but it is not uniform continuous, right?
That will make
yeah. So the essentially, so even Y being compact is not enough. So yeah, so totally boundedness is not enough. We got it. And yes, sir.
Many of the participants may not be much aware about these ideas like total boundedness and all that.
Oh yeah, my bad.
So
yeah, I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry.
Okay.
That we can do in a personal discussion. We can have it.
Okay.
Now is in KSOM.
You are in KSOM. Okay, fine.
So I think we are almost exhausted our time.
Then Shubham, you can actually talk to Arun.
Yes.
Okay, fine.
Yes.
Okay, then yeah. Thank you.
Hari, do you have anything to add the present?
No, nothing.
Okay, then let us go for a discussion now. Okay, so thank you, Hari, for the session on Riemann integration. Students, now it is time for interaction. You can express your comments, or if you have any doubt regarding Riemann integration, that you can ask now. Before asking the doubt or expressing your comments, please introduce yourself, and also, if possible, switch on your video. Hari, you can also switch on your video.
Okay.
Hello, sir.
Hi, Amrita. Hi.
Hello, sir. I'm Amrita. I am from St. Joseph's College, Devagiri, Calicut. Sir, your class was really nice, especially Riemann integration. More than the problems that you discussed, you went through the basic concepts of Riemann integration, which lacks mainly for us. What we study is everything else, but the main concept or the basic concept of integration, the area, that's what we lack. And actually, I have learned integration in my first sem, but we have the topic for the second sem, for the sixth sem. We haven't reached the topic yet, but still I could follow most of the things, especially Riemann integration, upper sum, lower sum, and all. But little topics were little. It was difficult, especially Cauchy's criteria, Cauchy's topic, and all. But still, most of the topics I could follow. Thank you so much, and it will also help me for my sixth sem too, and especially for JAM exam. Thank you so much, sir. It was really helpful. Thank you for spending such 1.5 hour for us.
Hi, sir. I'm Gopika from Delhi University. My place is at Calcutta. So, thank you so much, sir. This class was really nice and helpful, and like covering such a hard topic in a short time is really hard. But you started from the basic concepts, and as Amrita told, it was really helpful for us to like go through everything and brush up all the topics. So, thank you so much, sir. This class was really nice.
Thanks.
Thank you, Gopika. Others?
Okay, just a comment. So, okay, yeah, Joji, please.
So my name is Joji. I'm from CMS College, Hotan. Sir, your class was nice. I didn't even know that limits. I only know that limits is used for Riemann integration, not the other way around. So for finding a limit, we can use integration. It was not known to me. So thank you for that, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Yeah, so,
Joji.
yeah, so what I was trying to say is everyone said it is nice. So in case you guys have any suggestion to improve for myself, you can say that too. Don't think that, oh, he's a teacher, he won't feel good. Don't think so. So if you have any suggestion for me to improve, you can say that too. It's most welcome. Any criticism, constructive criticism is also most welcome. Thanks.
Others? Lakshmi?
Hello.
Yeah.
I'm audible.
Yes, Karan. Yeah, yes.
Yeah. Good evening, sir. Sir, your lecture was quite helpful. I'm from Delhi University. I'm in. One second. My camera is my video fine now?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
fine.
yes.
Okay. So, sir, I'm from Delhi University in final year. I am about to give JAM in February 2022. Sir, I had this doubt that be it Riemann integration or any other topic, how should I be able to recall all the results at the time of attempting a question? Because sometimes it's tricky that what could be used for the particular question.
Yeah, so it's I mean, this is not only for mathematics. Almost everywhere the same thing works, right? So I know all these things, so what to use? So I don't have a direct answer. I don't think anyone will have a direct answer. So there is a professor in IIT Gandhinagar. His name is Indranath Sengupta. So my friends told me that he said this thing. So whatever you know, if you have to see enough to understand things. So you may think that you may be able to understand, you may be able to, what's that called? Recite the theorem properly, you may be able to, like, you may have memorized everything properly, but if you have seen enough, which means if you have done enough things, if you have thought about it enough, then once you see a questions, you kind of start getting intuitions and ideas. I mean, of course, if you only know the things, then just by seeing a questions, I don't think it's a obvious thing that, okay, use this. For example, just now we did it, right? So everyone was trying to find the limit, but it's kind of hidden there itself that you can't really do it. But you have to open your mind, and you shouldn't think that this particular types of problems can be done like this. But that is good in case of tackling exams. But in general mathematics, keep your mind open. And even if you have to see same things multiple times, and every other time you see it, you have to see it a bit deeper. I mean, same book, it may be a basic book, but if you are reading it twice, you should be able to get something more. Why? Because you had that much. For example, you are reading a basic book now, let's say Bartil Shapert itself, And after 1 year, if you are reading it, I'm pretty sure you will be able to understand more, because in this 1 year, you would have got experience in other places. And those experience will combine and help you even in this small thing. Okay, so it's not like just by reading real analysis you will learn real analysis. But if you are knowing other algebra and other things, you can still get ideas from that. So you have to see. You shouldn't split things as this is this subject, this is this subject. You should integrate it as Riemann, not as Riemann integration, but that will help you. I mean, that's what I think. As a mathematician, maybe.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, it was quite helpful. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, Jaskaran, of course, your experiences will help you to have a holistic view of the things. Okay, others? If anyone wish to make any comment, you can do it now.
Hello.
Yeah, Ms. Lakshmi.
Hello, sir. Myself Lakshmi. I am also studying at Marakesh's College, Kodamangalam. I am also a third year student. Sir, your class was really good. Your session and the problems really helped me to understand the basic concepts of Riemann integration. Thank you so much, and thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lakshmi. Anyone else? Hari, it is my suggestion that we have only covered only very little bit of Riemann integration by this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So if possible, we can have one or two more sessions, if as per your availability of time, so that we can.
So I was actually thinking that I mean, most of the questions, I mean, problems to be discussed, and the numerical questions will be almost like this, or find the integration. Or
the concepts should be very clear at the root level. Yeah,
theory can be done, but numerical, I mean, I was actually planning to go more into theory and discuss why these things work and all, but then the questions, I mean, need for question arise, and that's why I went to numerical. So
so if possible, we can think of further sessions on this topic according to the availability of your time.
Yeah, and according to the need also. I mean, if there are more people.
Of course, you know, we need for the degree level students, they need a little bit more on this Riemann integration. The types of functions which are Riemann integrable, and also the criteria for Riemann integrability, like that things are needed, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, after the first few minutes, I kind of assumed that everyone had seen it. That's why I skimmed through it and then left it. Yes, sorry, my bad. So yeah, next time I mean, if I'm taking again, I'll touch those things again and discuss them.
If possible, we can arrange it in a nearby days itself, because
the
exams are very near. This happened on February 13th, JAM examination, and examination is on December last.
Okay.
Thank you.
I mean, we can keep one more session somewhere in near future.
Okay. So thank you, Hari, for this evening, and thank you, everyone. Wish you all the very best for your exams. Let us wind up here. Good night.